Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. Today I had to do something a little bit different that's a little more positive because, the news is being kind of bad, especially in my hometown. We've had the tragedy that happened on Monday with the shooting, but I would also say that we're winning. And what I mean by that is if you check out Heckler Koch on Twitter, there was an intern, I'm guessing, who put up something that was pretty woke about how Heckler Koch doesn't deal with gun bunnies. Now, historically, that's kind of true, but Heckler Koch has always had a policy. I was looking for the word policy. I don't know why. I guess it's still early for me. That says they will not enter into identity politics. Now, this tweet went viral, and everyone in the 2A community rallied and went after Heckler and Koch. Now, why is that a big deal? Because it shows that we can win the culture war. And the culture war is important to us because this is where we get those identity things like, trans people in places that everywhere, basically, that we can't deal with. So Heckler Koch came out and they tweeted that we should abolish gun bunnies, basically, in the 2A community. And this was on the heels of Miller coming out and saying that they're wanting to destroy the patriarchy and change the dynamics of what's going on in the beer brewing world, because their idea was that they had, their commercial anyway, shows this woman who says that the first brewers were women. Whether or not that's true is debatable in my opinion because, I think beer brewing was an accident to begin with, and people figured it out over time. I would cite how beer saved the world for that last little bit there. But what's interesting is that you don't mess with the 2A community, especially when it comes to anything that's kind of on the fringes of the left that the left likes, because we have understood forever that the left is not our friend. No matter how much David Hogue likes to say we want to have a debate, no matter how many times you see someone in the media saying they want to have a debate about the 2A or about sensible gun control, that's always a Mott and Bailey where they're trying to get you in so that they can try to make you look like a fool, one, using their talking points, and two, it's with they never are able to face down a educated Second Amendment person. Case in point, you look at Colion Noir, how many times he's been on debate stages or with debates, and they never can counter his speeches or his points effectively. Brandon Herrera, the AK guy, enter him. He's also big in the political space, believe it or not, in the libertarian space, where he goes to Turning Point USA. He's been to several young libertarian speeches to talk about what he does in the 2A and how he advocates for the 2A. If you watch the 2A guys, the ones that are really popular on YouTube or Rumble, you can tell their politics. They just don't openly go for politics like I do. Now, what is interesting is, like I was saying, it's interesting to watch how this unfolded. Is these guys, Heckler Koch was summarily dragged. They were ratioed. If you don't know what ratio means, is that people reply to a tweet, and it gets more action or more responses or more interactions than the original one. Now, they were ratioed for this, and they also got dragged by every 2A advocate. So Donut Operator came out. Brandon Herrera came out from the AK guy. Iraq Veteran 8888 came out. Mac or Tim from Military Arms Channel came out. These are some big heavy hitters in the YouTube space, in the gun tube space, and they weren't the only ones that came out hot and heavy against HK. You have to understand, and I think these 2A companies understand where their consumers are, who their consumers are. They're mostly males. There's a lot that they're trying to get more females in the space, and there are a lot more females in the space now than there ever have been. Thank God. We need everyone to be strapped, to be honest. Especially after seeing this stuff on Monday. I'm even more of an advocate of being strapped all the time, or being able to carry and conceal, but also to have the other parts of that training to be ready to render aid if you need to. Because you could probably stop the threat, but there's probably going to be some blowback from that, meaning there's going to be some people that are hurt, and they need to be taken care of. But HK came out with a tweet at the end of the day where they said, HK does not engage in identity politics. A policy was violated, changes were made, and they're basically rolling forward. What they probably did was the intern or whoever it was that was in charge of that tweet that initially got the firestorm was either summarily dealt with and put back in a box, or was outright fired. They understand fully where their consumers are. For you to demonize 2A guys in any way when you are a 2A company is asinine and suicidal if you want your company to exist. And HK is already on the fringe for us in the United States, because mostly all we can get from HK are a few select rifles at an extreme price and some of their pistols. And this is because of where their housing is, where their headquarters is. Their headquarters is in Germany, because they're a German firm. They're old remnants of Rheinmetall. So Rheinmetall was the first guys that made the MG42 and a lot of the German war machine during World War II. This is after the post-war. They spun up and HK became a thing. They're one of the primary weapons suppliers in Germany, specifically small arms provider for German military and for the world in a lot of places. So it doesn't set very well in a very masculine space to kind of demonize masculinity. And this shows that those boycotts that have happened with Bud Light have scared the hell out of everybody else. If you haven't known what's going on with Bud Light came out with Dylan Mulvaney's stuff, and he basically advocated for their brand, or was a brand ambassador. It was a screw-up in multiple ways, but it blew back. And Bud Light sales is down up to 30%, and anyone that's been associated with that has been summarily either fired or has stepped down and taken leaves of absence, because they are losing billions of dollars because they bit the hand that feed them. Now, what's interesting is Bud Light is going on, and they first tried to do the Clydesdale commercial, and that didn't catch on with a lot of American consumers, or with consumers in general. Now they've launched another ad campaign where they're trying to play on the veterans' heartstrings. To me, that's dirty pool, and of course, I hope that the people that have boycotted Bud Light see what they're trying to do, that they're trying to be played, or they're trying to play their consumers again to get them back. And I think the damage is already done. With this new campaign, they're using camouflage bottles during Pride Month, no less, to try to get those consumers they lost back. The blowback in the Bud Light circles went so far as the LGBTQ, whatever the hell that alphabet guys are, went so far as they're boycotting the brand now because of stuff. I don't know the whole politics around it, and I didn't get into that part of it. What I thought was interesting about that particular one was that particular boycott was that it had teeth and it grew legs, and it's still going on. You know, I've been to my favorite haunt is out back in Farmington, New Mexico, and it's been one of mine since I was 21. And I've walked in there, and I see older regular dudes that used to drink Bud Light. They have skipped it completely. Either they're drinking harder liquor, or they've changed directly to their competitor, to Bud Light's competitor. Now, HK faced that same stance, that same repercussions because of what they were saying here. And rather than fight that, they immediately apologized and immediately started doing damage control. And for that, they will probably be okay, because what will happen there is the 2A is forgiving, the 2A community, I should say, is pretty forgiving, especially if people correct course. And I think that's what just happened. And it's funny that, these culture war battles are basically meme wars that are happening in Twitter, or on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, wherever these guys can be found. You see people, the troll lords sort of, that are actually coming out and fighting the battles that need to be fought. And for me, just being a casual observer of it and getting in the space and trying to make a name for New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union, follow us on Twitter. It's Spawn082. Anyway, what I noticed is that I follow a lot of news channels, and I follow some House representatives and some senators, and I follow gun brands that I'm interested in. HK is always one of those ones that I've always had a soft spot for, mostly because I like the roller-delayed guns. And sure enough, they rallied, they fought, and they got the win. So what this shows, and what it shows to me, hopefully, and to you, is that we can win, and we are winning. It's disheartening to see so many things like the Durham report. If you got to read any of that, we all knew what it was in it. Basically, it was they demonized Trump as a Russian collusion agent, and they find out later that none of it was real. Duh. We all knew that. The problem is now, what are the repercussions for those that bit on that Durham report and wouldn't let go? The media, CNN, NBC, all these guys that rode that horse until it wouldn't ride anymore. Where are the repercussions for them? And better question is, why is the FBI still a thing? After this stuff that's gone on, the FBI needs some major reform. You can't see can't go on Twitter without seeing a poll from someone. Iraq veteran 8888, so Eric, he's been good about posting polls to see what the American people think about the government in general, one way or another. Would we expect federal soldiers, U.S. soldiers, to fire on American people? Absolutely. That showed handily that was a thing. That is something that the military needs to fix, their perception, or the perception that the American people have of them now, because we no longer see them as our best friends and our allies like we once did. We see them definitely as an enemy of the state, that they are going to do whatever the state tells them to do. And in that same vein, he's entered a poll where he said, would you, if violence was perpetrated on you, would you be able to win? No, because the state will absolutely dominate you. Anyone who's under any delusion that we could fight and win, we can, but it's going to be bloody, and it's going to be bad, and no one wants to go there. You see the leftists come on and say you need an F-15 and a nuke to fight the American military. That's true, but you remember that you're our neighbor. So if they hit us with a guided bomb, you're kind of collateral damage as far as they're concerned. Because these people no longer think of you or me as a normal human being. They see us as a threat. Whistleblowers in the FBI have been now stripped of their clearance. They're being investigated by the FBI. So they're going after people that have come out and said these abuses of power have actually happened. So expect more audits for anyone that's as vocal as I'm trying to be. I'm trying not to get an audit. I hope I don't get an audit, especially starting my new business. But, it is what it is, and I'm not going to shut up. And I don't suspect a lot of people will shut up either. It's kind of glaringly obvious that the federal government is no longer our friends. You cannot look at tax rates. You cannot look at being taking an entire half of the population of the United States and demonizing them and making them think that their vote doesn't actually count when it should. There's a lot of people still clinging to this fraud narrative where they need to still change what they're thinking and actually look at what actually happened. There absolutely was some level of fraud, but there was not to the extent that it would have cost an entire election. What happened were there were changes to election laws, like in Pennsylvania, like in New Mexico to some extent, where they changed how absentee voting happened. Instead of doing absentee ballots, they did mail ballots. What's the problem with that? There's no security there. With an absentee ballot in New Mexico, what is supposed to happen is you're supposed to apply for the absentee ballot. So first you have to ask for it. Then the secretary of the county or the county clerk will actually go ahead and send you a letter saying, did you request a ballot for this? You sign off again, and then when it's time for the election or when it's time for you to get your ballot, a ballot will be mailed to you. That's kind of to identify that you first asked for it, and second, that it is for sure you that is asking for it and it will get to vote. The difference there with mail-in ballots is there's no verification. They're just sent out. And the problem with that is that if I got like 10 ballots because no one updated the rolls, I could vote all 10 ballots and no one would be the wiser. Now, it's a felony to do so, but that doesn't stop people from mass shootings, doing hard drugs. It has never, a law being on the books has never stopped someone from doing something if they were determined to do it. That's where I keep coming and saying, hey, there's the genie's out of the bottle. Gun control's dead. 3D printing exists, and that technology has gotten better. I saw there's a gun going around in the Twitter space or in the social media space called the Orca, and it is upper and lower AR-15 is printed on this gun, and it's capable of shooting, thousands of rounds before it needs to have parts replaced on it. That would never happen, 4 or 5 years ago. Technology and the material science has improved. And this is what the left doesn't understand. You can ban people outright from printing guns. You can say you can't do this. How are you policing it? You can't. Like Napster ended record stores, this is going to end a lot of companies who manufacture things because additive manufacturing, that's what that's called, 3D printing, is a thing. And metal manufacturing is even getting more advanced. When I say that, they have DefCAD, the guys that first started this new First Amendment type thing in the 3D printed space. They have a printer that will actually take a block of aluminum and finish either a 1911 or finish an AR-15 lower. And I've heard rumor that they're even have files that allow you to do uppers. Just the upper receiver of the AR-15. So you'd still need the barrel and all the other components. But those are the regulated pieces, the lowers of a pistol, the lower of an AR-15. Those are the regulated pieces by the ATF. Now, manufacturing firearms has a long history in the United States, and it's never going away. They can try to ban it, but it won't ban. I've been curious. I mentioned this to one of the leftist Rambo guy I was talking to. He didn't know that 3D printing had advanced so far. And I showed him a 3D printed gun going to town, and he's like, holy crap, we have to do something about this. It's like, you can't. How are you going to stop files from being exchanged? They couldn't do it with Napster. They couldn't do it with LimeWire. So the music industry had to change and adapt. What is going to change the firearms industry or the restrictions on firearms? We live in a new space now, a digital space, where you can actually exchange files or ideas in real time. That's why Twitter Facebook and all these major social media companies have so much power is that you can exchange ideas instantly. And where we're going, that is more dangerous to one side than the other. Now, if we had people on our side who were actually strong enough, I mean, if you look at what the Adam Schiffs, the Mitch McConnells, you see these people coming into power and they don't actually stand up for their constituents. Weak men create weak times. And until we get strong people in to say, hey, no, enough's enough, you're going to continue to see the slide in American culture. You're going to see the border overrun because no one's willing to offend the leftist culture war mob because they seem to be the most vocal and the most militant arm. I'm not advocating for militancy, but I am saying you need to have a spine if you're actually going to get into the space. And why I still see a lot of hope in this. You don't see multi-billion-dollar companies like Heckler Koch change their mind almost instantly without some thought process there. They realized after this tweet came out that their bottom line was about to be affected in a big way. So they reversed course and tried to fix it. That's how we win the culture wars. We make them pay. You know, right now, I mentioned this on yesterday's podcast, that Target's actually putting out swimwear focused for kids with tucking accessories for trans, quote-unquote, trans boys. Now, I'll tell you, first off, kids cross-dressing doesn't really bother me in that kids will be kids. Let them learn. And I'd rather them cross-dress before they actually start going down the surgical path. But at the same time, trans kids don't exist. What I mean by that is that parents need to, talk to their kids and say, hey, you're still a boy. You may have those feelings, but you're still a boy. Or you may have those feelings, but you're still a girl. I think firmly, as much as it has pissed off a lot of people, I think that they're demonizing or trying to destroy those kids in a weird way of conversion therapy. Maybe some of those kids are gay. Maybe some of those kids are lesbian. Maybe some of those kids are just wanting to explore. But you converting them to trans, you basically destroyed their life for the future. You're destroying the next generation of gay and lesbians because you're telling them it wasn't okay to be gay or lesbian, that they have to conform to the gender they believe they are or think they are. And in doing so, you're taking away anything, any of their development, socially, morally, ad infinitum. You're nipping it in the bud. You're basically genociding a group of kids right now for the sake of virtue signaling. And I'm not okay with that. I've never been okay with that. Let kids be kids, and eventually they'll figure it out. What you find in the space, especially when it comes to trans kids, is that if you leave them alone, let them explore for a while, they eventually come back and conform to their normal gender identity. Not because of any mental issues, but it's the natural order of things. What they figure out is, that's probably not my bag. That's probably not my jam. So why are we going to permanently maim a kid or maim a person for a temporary feeling? That's what my biggest problem with all that trans stuff has been. In reality, it's a minuscule amount of the entire populace. We're actually amplifying it and making it more of a trend, or the left is, than it actually is. In the 2A space, we have to keep to our guns, because when we circle our wagons, this action that Heckler Koch did gets done right away. And our community is one of those communities that's still kind of rational and sane. We realize the realities of the world, that kumbaya drum circle place doesn't really exist, and that you're going to have to get dirty if you're going to protect your family. And to that end, we all are ready to do it. That doesn't mean we're psychos. That doesn't mean we're taking on the government. That's not at all what it is. It means leave us alone. It means quite literally, we understand what you think. That's great for you. Go do you. But that's not our family. That's not our group. That's not our culture. And our culture will keep self-checking and self-correcting as it always has in the 2A space. So there's some moments of hope. You know, you look at all the stuff, the court cases that are coming down, and some of them look bleak. Some of them look great. Ultimately, what I think is going to end up happening is they're going to have to address this, because the government isn't giving up, and American people don't seem to be willing to hand in their guns. After COVID, you saw a spike in gun ownership, and that's because the government literally said they cannot respond to calls for service at points in time. People woke up. Leftists woke up, realizing that, oh crap, you're going to have to defend yourself. You cannot rely on the state. These are tenets in the 2A community we've known forever. Now, those of you that have listened to my audio podcasts and have found me on Rumble, thank you very much. Tomorrow, I will be dropping a special episode dedicated to one of my friends who's new into hunting, and he's been hunting for a long time, but he's wanting to get more education on bullets to use, specifically to make a humane kill on big game. So I will be going deep diving and doing something entirely more fun that isn't going to be politically related, that you'll find on Rumble if you're interested. It's going to be talking about bullet selection for hunting elk and deer, and bullet density and cross-section that you want exactly for getting a humane kill on a deer or an elk. You'll be able to find that video on Rumble. I'm currently producing it right now, so it'll drop tomorrow, probably around 8 or maybe later. Depends on how long it takes me to get the stuff together to give a cohesive argument for what I believe is the best or the better bullets for big game hunting. Like, share, subscribe, be great.